Without the fright. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me.
Cleo, you all set on the grandmother has
This is the most important.
I need
Yeah, wonderful.
Look at that dog. He's a funny dog.
I know.
Your mother just called me a smartass.
You are.
Maybe out in the hall.
Oh, farm out. That's great. It's so good.
I want to look at your study.
Give you another bite.
Okay.
No funny characters, Molly. No funny characters. I don't want to do these right now. No, I can't. I don't have to, actually. But I'd rather do them a little bit later. Okay? Because we can actually do those while we're sitting down.
I went into one person I know.
Who?
Andy Marks. It's everywhere.
Guess what I found in the middle of everything? This is the Vic.
When he hired my nephew for a commercial 20 years ago. She was in? She was in her late 30s in 97?
Yeah.
And she's still in her late 30s?
Wait, please.
That's right. That's the most important part.
Oh, you did make all this? Waving at you.
I did.
Nice.
You did? Did you really?
Did I really?
Lying to me left and
Yes,
right.
I learned how to make these radish flowers in high school. Actually, Julia Childs taught me how.
Wow. Good company. You're the good man. What did I tell you about
I know you so well, Dad.
Well, they're trying.
Yeah, send to me.
I didn't see Chris. Yes, thank you.
Better.
Nice to see you again.
Oh, Mitz, they're ruining my white control.
Well, good luck with your new job.
Is this photo belong to Nikki?
No, it's just my parents.
I know it's your parents.
I don't think it belongs to her. She can't have it.
Larry, if they're not, burn it. He does better.
Oh, but constantly present? Well,
true.
that every moment has to be held.
Melissa
Every
Trumbo,
moment.
this is your life. Kath called from New York. She said to tell you hello, and then she said, "Did you know her name was Melissa?"
It's a very strange facility.
But more than that, he was also a man of character, a man of standards, a man of integrity, and a man who suffered greatly for his beliefs. Tonight we will be attempting to write history, R-I-G-H-T, write history by presenting the Oscar that Mr. Trumbo won in 1953 for the marvelous film Roman Holiday. During his lifetime, he was never able to publicly claim that honor. But it is our hope that here and now, as Mr. Trumbo's widow, Cleo, is finally given his Oscar statuette, that one more dark chapter in American history can be closed. To help us further understand Dalton Trumbo and his important role in American and Hollywood history, we now turn to writer Faye Kanan. Faye is a past president of the Academy and current chair of the Writers Branch Executive Committee. So I'd like Faye to come up for a moment. Faye?
In September of 1976, when friends and colleagues gathered to pay tribute to the passing of Dalton Trumbo, it's reported that some of them joked that they half expected that he would have left behind a final message to be read to the assemblage. As a matter of fact, his friend and fellow writer Michael Wilson confessed that Trumbo had indeed a few months before given the matter some consideration. Because he told Wilson, and I quote, "I don't trust a graceless SOB like you to strike the proper balance." The statement is pure Trumbo, unsentimental, irreverent, and mordantly witty. And I can only hope that I can strike the proper balance tonight in saying a few words about this extraordinary man and the events that led to this occasion. I don't think many will quarrel with the judgment that in his day, he was the most prolific and successful screenwriter in Hollywood. The roll call of some of his known credits is impressive. A Bill of Divorcement, Kitty Foyle, Tender Comrade, A Guy Named Joe, Our Vines Have Tender Grapes, Exodus, Spartacus, Lonely Are the Brave, Hawaii, to say nothing of the sizable list of his uncredited credits. He was a consummate storyteller, an impeccable craftsman, an uncompromising yet compassionate observer of his fellow man with an almost old-fashioned fidelity to principle. I first met Dalton when, fresh out of college, I came into the industry as a staff reader at RKO. I was introduced to him by a fellow reader, and he immediately broke every stereotype of a writer I had nurtured through my adolescent years. He was stylish, he was charming, almost courtly, voluble, and unpredictably candid. He instantly became a role model for me, since he'd been a reader himself and had successfully made the transition to screenwriting that most of us aspired to. As a matter of fact, his most recent screenplay at that time, A Man to Remember, was the first film directed by another young comer, Garson Kanin, who not too long after was to become my brother-in-law. I was also impressed to learn that Dalton had for years worked a shift in a Los Angeles bakery in order to support writing a novel, which made me feel better about keeping my bread and butter job, if you'll forgive the pun, while I worked on original screenplays at night. With typical irony, Dalton was much later to say that his year in jail in 1950 for contempt of Congress was in some ways a boon, because jailbirds being forced to go to bed at 10 o'clock, he changed his night writing habit and learned to write during the day. It was certainly a generous way of alluding to one of the most shameful and ugly periods of repression in the history of the nation and the motion picture industry. I suspect that many in the audience tonight have no actual memory of the Hollywood blacklist and gray list. Some were probably children or not even born. So a bit of background. In 1947, in a national climate of feverish anti-communism, men and women were called before the House Un-American Activities Committee to testify as to their thoughts and beliefs, not their acts. They were asked if they were or had ever been a member of the Communist Party, and required to name names of their friends and colleagues who were believed to be communists. 10 Hollywood men, including Trumbo, were jailed for refusing to respond, and over 1,000 people, actors, directors, screenwriters, musicians, craftspeople, found themselves unemployable and forced into an involuntary exile. Families were uprooted, careers aborted, lives destroyed. Some suffered more than others, some grew, and some diminished. But it was Dalton's statement in 1970, when he was presented the Laurel Award by the Writers Guild of America, that perhaps best expressed the impact of that long nightmare. I quote him in part: "The blacklist was a time of evil, and no one on either side who survived it came through untouched. When you who are in your 40s or younger look back on that dark time, as I think you should, it will do no good to search for villains or heroes, or saints or devils, because there were none. There were only victims." The use of fronts was a common practice during the blacklist era. It was a dangerous masquerade. Many writers risked their own careers by lending their names to their blacklisted friends to help them earn a precarious living. When Dalton wrote the story for Roman Holiday, he asked his close friend, Ian McClellan Hunter, to front for him. Ian agreed, and Ian's agent sold the story to Frank Capra. It was pretty much the practice at the time for the story or treatment writer to go on to write the next step, so Ian wrote the screenplay. But Capra didn't make the movie, and the script was eventually sold to Paramount for William Wyler, who took Ian's screenplay and, with some additional writing by John Dighton, made the delightful film that you're going to see tonight. In that period, the Academy awarded a separate Oscar for Screen Story, and in 1953, that Oscar went to Ian Hunter for the story of Roman Holiday. It was to be decades later, with the revelation by Hunter of the true authorship, that the Writers Guild, in its continuing effort to right some of the wrongs of that era, restored Dalton's credit as the writer of the story. And shortly after, the Academy Writers Branch Executive Committee proposed that the Academy's records be changed and that Dalton Trumbo be presented posthumously with his Best Story Oscar for Roman Holiday. The Academy Board unanimously approved both proposals. But there's more to this occasion than the celebration of a remarkable man and the restoration of his long overdue credit. Telling his story encourages us to be vigilant in recognizing and fighting against repression and injustice in our own troubled times. and Dalton would have liked that. He once wrote, "I have never felt a compulsion to chatter about my loyalty, whether to God, country, government, or system. But to be proud of America herself, yes, that I understand and share. Proud of her people, proud of all the good in her history, and ashamed of the bad. Glad that I was born in her midst." And now I'd like Bob to come back up and Cleo Trumbo for the presentation of the award.
Thank you, Faye. Before presenting this Oscar, I would like to call attention to some very special people who are with us in the audience tonight. First, we have one of the stars of Roman Holiday, Mr. Eddie Albert. Eddie, would you stand? And with us tonight is the son of Ian McCullen Hunter, film director Tim Hunter. I would like to introduce the children of Dalton and Cleo Trumbo, Nicola, Christopher, and Mitzi. I'm sure you're very proud of both of your parents tonight. In presenting this Oscar for Best Motion Picture Story of 1953, we honor not only Dalton Trumbo, but his wife Cleo, who stood by him throughout all these difficult years and inspired his artistry with support and love. It is my honor to present you with the Academy Award for the Best Motion Picture Story for the film Roman Holiday, screen story by Mr. Dalton Trumbo. It's heavy, so we'll put it back.
I also want to express my appreciation to all the people who continue to insist that the credits of blacklisted writers are recognized. This Oscar is the result of their perseverance. Especially I want to thank all of you who have come here tonight for this event. It's a pleasure to share this evening with you. In 1951, Dalton was released from prison after serving 10 months for contempt of Congress. He had been blacklisted since 1947, and by this time we were broke. Our last asset was a small ranch we were living on in the mountains between here and Bakersfield, and selling it wasn't easy. So Dalton did what he knew how to do so well. He went to his typewriter. The result was Roman Holiday. Our friend Ian Hunter agreed to put his name on the script, and when it sold, we had the money we needed to finance our escape to Mexico City and what we hoped were greener pastures. We caravanned with our friends the Butlers, we with our 3 children and a dog, they with their 4 children and a cat. It was during our stay in Mexico that Dalton wrote The Brave One. Several years later, it would win an Academy Award for the Best Original Story of 1956 under the fictitious name of Robert Rich. It didn't take long for the Academy to remove Original Story from its awards list. I don't want to leave you with the impression that living under the blacklist was a steady procession of motion picture assignments and secret honors. It was not. Earning a living was a precarious business. The Hollywood blacklist put hundreds of people out of work, and across the country, loyalty oaths forced thousands more out of their jobs in all walks of life, from the factory to the university. It was a time of fear, and no one was exempt. Dalton called it the time of the toad, borrowing the phrase from Emile Zola. Zola had once written an article called The Toad. It was his advice to a young writer who could not stomach the aggressive mendacity of a press, which in 1890 was determined to plunge the citizens of the French Republic into disaster over the Dreyfus affair. Zola explained to the young man his own method of inuring himself against what he read in the newspapers. Each morning, over a period of months, he bought a toad in the marketplace and devoured it alive and whole. The toads were cheap, and after such a diet, he could face almost any newspaper with a tranquil stomach. Recognize and swallow the toad contained therein, and actually relish what would be poison to a healthy man. Dalton wrote, "All nations in the course of their history have passed through periods which might be called the time of the toad, an epoch long or short as the temper of the people might permit, in which the nation turns upon itself in a kind of compulsive madness, to deny all in its tradition that is clean, to exalt all that is vile, and to destroy any heretical minority which asserts toad meat not to be the delicacy which government edict declares it. Triple heralds of the time are the loyalty oath, the compulsory revelation of faith, and the secret police." This award makes the declaration that the time of the toad in our community is past. But if we are not wise enough to learn the lessons of the blacklist, I am afraid that at some future time another generation will be faced with the same circumstance. Once again, men and women will find themselves compelled to risk everything in a fight they did not choose and stand up for the principles so eloquently stated in our Constitution. They will do it for many reasons, among them, as Rudolph von Schering put it, the battle for one's legal rights is the poetry of character. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a few minutes to allow the camera crews to clear before we proceed with this evening's screenings of Roman Holiday, followed by Dalton Trumbo's The Brave One. Dalton also won an Oscar for that 1956 film, although he did not receive it until 1975. But we are gratified to know that, in fact, he did hold one of his Oscars in his hands, the hands of the man who wrote the pictures you are about to see tonight. So thank you for coming, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the movies, and we'll just wait a few minutes till the crews can leave here.
That's a good.
Do they all live in, where do they live? Well, my grandson lives in
Beautiful up there. Oh, wonderful. Really?
The ball you're cooking. Spitball. Yeah, these
That's my hard time. I say always, I don't even. I've just gotten
I wish you would. She'd love to see you. I know you sent a lovely note.
You're right. You have to do it well. It's my friend Stephanie. Hey, Missy. You're supposed to be on the other end. Hi. Good to see you. How are you? Oh, my goodness.
Did you?
Oh, really?
Trying to write a big time. Thank you very much. Wonderful to have the opportunity.
You know, nobody's ever really.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry.
I'm doing Linda, how's everything? Thank you. At the ranch. At the ranch. Family friends. Excuse me.
Of course.
Sorry.
What this is. Yeah.
Her in a bag and take her on home.
Oh, yeah. Trying to video.
Sweet girl.